Hello everyone, Coach Carole here. Today's session is all about using artificial intelligence, the language models such as ChatGPT and Quillbot. I've included my acronym for SMART because I think we now need to be smart about the way in which we use them for our genealogical pursuits. I'm going to share my screen with you now and move through a series of slides to introduce you to these two wonderful tools. On the left is my vision of what ChatGPT looks like. I had to have a vision in my mind, so when I'm conversing with it, I have this in mind. On the right is my vision of Quillbot, which is another AI tool that helps me enormously in checking my grammar and my passive voice and other essential parts of my writing style. So when you're starting to prepare your ancestral stories from your research about your ancestors, these two artificial intelligence tools will be your assistants. If you're watching this after the event, you might like to write down what your experiences are already with artificial intelligence. Do you know all about it? Have you used ChatGPT or Quillbot before? Have you seen some of the conversations that are happening in social media? So you can add your comments to your notes, or if you're watching this live, you can add them in the chat box. To be really smart, we need to think about how we're going to have these conversations with an artificial intelligence. Remember that the SMART acronym stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So keep those in mind when you are having those conversations. And the specific one is really important to ensure that you get what you expect to in your conversations with these bots. ChatGPT will give you an answer in a very short amount of time in response to a prompt that you provide for it in text. It's not as if you are talking to this robot in real language, you are using text to communicate. So this is where you need to be quite specific with how you say it and what you expect ChatGPT to respond with. So we're really learning about this tool. It reminds me of when we were first introduced to search engines like Google. We had to learn how to use that tool to get the specific information we were after. Now, the difference here is that ChatGPT won't give you just a list of places on the internet for you to go and explore. It will give you real answers in real time. So it's a very different kind of search tool. What I suggest you do before you really launch into using ChatGPT to write your stories is to paste your prompt into a Google spreadsheet or some Word document, anything that you can use very quickly to copy and paste from and to. Then you can paste that prompt into the conversation bar and press enter. And you've got a record of what you asked. And then when you've got the response, you can copy that back to perhaps a Google Doc. Here's what an example of that research log prompts might look like. This is one of mine in a Google spreadsheet with a set of prompts showing in the middle section here and a column to indicate what kind of information that is about, and a space on the right-hand side of that for any further resources, notes, or extra data. So providing a Google spreadsheet for your prompts would be ideal. Let's have a look at mine. And now you can see an example of my genealogy research log. And these are the search prompts for ChatGPT in conversations about a specific ancestor. In this case, it's Charles Reginald Cutting. Now, I have, of course, quite a substantial amount of research records for this person, and my research now is pretty much ready to be put into some sort of narrative form so it's easy to read and engaging for my family. So that is the purpose of using these prompts in ChatGPT. We're going to generate a narrative. So in that first column there, or second, third column, you'll see that I'm asking specific things of ChatGPT. So in this case, please write a narrative introduction in the Cutting family group, including his information from my tree. And I've got the information from the tree over in the notes column. And I can very quickly just highlight that and copy it. But before we get into the demonstration, let's come back to my slides and have a look at the next one so that you can see what you do with that information. Here's what it looks like when you put it into ChatGPT and part of the response that ChatGPT has given. And from there, create a Google Doc so that you can copy and paste it in place. And there's a reason for using the Google Doc and the Google spreadsheets, because I also have Quillbot, which is attached to my Google toolbar. And there will be some demonstrations of how that can be used as well. So the demonstration that we're going to start out with today is to use general questions first, then expand the responses with specific and in-depth prompts, and then explore and experiment with formats. Just going to pause here. Before we start asking the questions and putting the prompts in place, I wanted to show you a little bit more about the ChatGPT layout that you see when you have your account. In the middle is information about ChatGPT, its examples, capabilities, and limitations, and the conversation bar below. On the left are the conversations I've already had with ChatGPT listed on the left side. I can change the mode from light to dark and back again. It's easier on the eyes in dark mode, especially for those watching this video tutorial. So now I'm going to come back to my research log. I have this question first to put in place. Copy that. Place it down here. Come back and copy this information, which is quite lengthy. And I've taken that from my records in Find My Past. So I haven't regenerated anything, I've just copied and pasted. So copy it again, back to ChatGPT, and put all of that inside square brackets. And so you can see that it's spaced out because of the way it came from the spreadsheet. But I believe that ChatGPT will understand all of that. So I'm asking it to use my writing style in a friendly tone. And so I've given it some examples of the way I write. So let's see what it does with it. So it's looked at the information and it's just turned it into a nice piece of narrative that's very easy to read, and some nice phrasing. And points out that there was a tragic death in the family of young Harry, and finishes up with a nice kind of motherhood statement, if you want. So I've got the beginning of my story, and I'm not going to use it word for word. I'm going to put my own style onto that. But now I want to add in some details. So coming back to my prompts, I'm particularly interested in Charles Reginald, who was known as Uncle Reg, and the fact that he had a twin brother, George Frank, who liked to be called Frank. So I'm copying that prompt about his birth and putting that in place. So I want them to write a birth notice this time. So copy that, come back here, paste it in place. So it's a birth notice about the twins. Let's see what it does with that. Just the sort of thing that you might have seen in a newspaper article if they had announced the birth of the twins. So it's a nice start to this information, this whole story about Uncle Reg. And so we continue in this fashion. So the next piece is about the baptism, the fact that they were baptized on the same day, but Charles Reginald was listed first. And this time I want the ChatGPT to write a paragraph about such events in Croydon and see what it comes up with. Once again, back to ChatGPT, paste in my query and press enter. And it doesn't have to think very long, which is one of the best things about ChatGPT that I've noticed. It's very, very quick. So it's making some assumptions now about how the church was filled with family, friends, and members of community who witnessed this important occasion, but it's likely that that was so. And baptisms were a significant event in the lives of family in Croydon and across England, etc. There we go. So we've got a nice story beginning to emerge about Uncle Reg. So on we go again. So this time we've skipped a few years and we're over to the marriage records. Don't know a lot about Uncle Reg between 1901 and 1932 in my records. So I'm going to go with this piece. So copy those back to GPT and paste and press enter. So now it's making up of a little bit of a narrative about this day on which they were married. I'm not sure that this particular church had a tall spire, so that's something I'll have to check. But because I added that extra piece of information about typical bridal wear in that era were floral dresses, not white as we are known to use these days. And a nice little touch there, the delicate fabric hugged her curves perfectly. And I know that Margaret was a curvy woman. And now it's suggesting that Charles looks sharp in his traditional black suit. Probably right. I'm not sure about the church's choir providing a musical backdrop, But you can see what it's doing. It's giving me ideas about how I'm going to structure this story about the event, this momentous event in the life of Uncle Reg. So on we go again. This time we're up to his military experiences. And because of the research that I've already done, this is where that prompt is coming from, certain things that I do know already. So that's why I think it's so important to learn how to have this spreadsheet of prompts. So let's see what it has to say now when I feed in this information about his military experience. In particular, I was interested in why he may have been still in the RAF, even right up to 1923. So now it's giving me a picture of what it's like for those who did not go to the front, but were involved in very important work back on the home front, especially in RAF bases like Lucas in Scotland, and what he might have had to do as an engineer. And there's the answer that it thought was relevant for why he may have served until 1923. It's possible that he simply enjoyed the work and wanted to continue serving his country, or alternatively, he may have had other personal or financial reason for staying in the service. And remember, this is back in 1914 to 18. This is, sorry, am I getting that mixed up? Is this after? Is this World War II? Yes, it's probably World War II. And then it finishes up with a paragraph again about his time in the RAF. So going back again, some of this we're going to have to check, of course, because some of it is not ringing all that true for me. Now, here's a little bit about his immigration. I do know that this family migrated to Australia in 1950, and they came out on the ship called the Asturias. And I've now got some prompts for ChatGPT to go on with. Paste those in place. And this time I'm asking for extracting the detailed information for the couple and their children who came out on this ship on the 30th of August 1950. So I might add a little more information. How much for the passage? What duration for the journey? And possibly what did the family experience on board the Asturias? That's quite a lot. Let's see what it does with that. So it's giving me the facts as I knew them from the passenger list, and that it departed from Southampton. And now it's telling me that the journey would have been long and arduous, spanning several weeks. The exact duration not specified, so that's a good statement to put in place where you don't know. And on board the Asturias, the family likely experienced a range of different amenities and services. It offered comfortable cabins, dining options, etc., etc. So we're getting a fuller picture now of what it was like for this family to migrate to another country. And let's go back. A couple more to do. This time about Charles's work and what it was like to be a chauffeur mechanic in 1939, which is the next record that I have for him, because there weren't any more census records that I could access. So copy that, back again, paste, and enter. So now it's giving me some details about what it was like to be an automotive technician, what the occupation required of them, what it was like in Kingston in the 1930s, where that town was located, and now a little more about what he might have had to do whilst at Lucas, Scotland, in his role as a chauffeur mechanic. So being a member of the RAF, he would have also been responsible for keeping the vehicles in good condition. Interesting and probably factual. And yes, I got mixed up before. It's definitely World War I we're talking about. All right, let us go back again. One last prompt to put in place for this story about Uncle Reg. This time it's about his death, and I found the record to say that he died in Queensland, but I have not been able to find a copy of that notice in the newspaper. So I would like some help on that. I'm going to ask ChatGPT how to help. Paste that in and ask it to display a typical death notice from that newspaper in 1981. Didn't spell death right there, but I'm sure it'll cope. Right, it's answering the first part of the question, that it can't do the research for me. But it's telling me that I could go to the newspaper's editorial team or a local library or archives in Hervey Bay to inquire. And now the second part of the question is answered fully. A typical death notice would have stated the full name, date and place of death, deceased age, information about the deceased surviving family members, details about the funeral, etc., etc. So that is a complete answer. So now we have a substantial set of information for Uncle Reg. I now want to think about how I'm going to turn all that into a narrative. So my first step is to change back to light mode. I found that if I try and copy from ChatGPT in the dark mode, it brings that colored background into my Google Doc, which I don't want. So I'm now just going to scroll all the way to the top and include all the prompts, and just copy it all. And then I will go back to my drive, create a new doc, and call it Uncle Reg's Story. So I want that as the title of this doc. Just highlighting that and going to the document title up here, renames it quickly. So then I can just paste in place everything that came from ChatGPT. It reminds me that it doesn't have access to upload images. There weren't any real images. What it was referring to were these little blocks here, which I can simply delete from the Google Doc. Takes a little while to fix the document up. But you can see now I've got several pages of script that I can work with. And you may be noticing as I'm going that some paragraphs have got some blue underlining. So let's go and look at those, because the next step is to look at how you can now edit this with the help of another artificial intelligence tool called Quillbot. What you're seeing on mine is Quillbot in action. So if I click into that little feather, it will give me a suggested rephrasing of the sentence that was highlighted above. So to select its suggestion, I can click it and it changes it immediately. And so on. You can keep going like that. But for the moment, let's have a look at another way in which Quillbot can help you. Another thing you might notice is that if you want to view all suggestions from Quillbot, and there are 28 of them, click into that one. Just move my head out of the way. And you'll see it opens up on the right-hand side a navigation toolbar in which you can see all the corrections that it's suggesting. A lot of punctuation changes, and wherever there's a blue underlining, it will show you in the column on the right. It's taking a little bit of time. And there it is. So that's a way of rewriting that sentence. And so instead of saying they were blessed with 7 children, we could say they were lucky enough to have 7 children. So clicking on it immediately changes it. So we've got lots of spelling and punctuation, but we're going to delete the prompt. We don't need these in place anyway. So a lot of that can go. So we're going to put headings in here, such as and continue on our way. So wherever you see some punctuation changes, all you need to do is click into that on the right-hand side and it changes it immediately. It just finds wherever it is. You can either ignore it or change it. So there's quite a lot of those. I won't bore you with that whole process. That was the prompt, so we can get rid of that. Again, we can try a rewrite of that sentence. Looks nicer. And so on. So there's quite a lot that we can do to this document, but we've saved time because in the matter of how long have we been online? 20 minutes or so. We have been through a set of prompts, carefully noted in our prompt spreadsheet. We've been over to ChatGPT and put those in place. We've got our answers and we've been able to copy all of that and bring it back to our document. And from here, we can then massage the content, rewrite sections of it, add in whatever we think we want, and create a story for this ancestor. So that is how you can make the best use of ChatGPT and Quillbot. So just coming back to wrong set, my slides that we started with today. Just waiting for it to come back into view. We had a look at ChatGPT and we've also had a quick look at Quillbot to see how it checks for grammar, structure, and style of writing. So if you've got any questions about this process, certainly ask away in wherever you can. If you are watching this live, then put them into the chat box. If you are watching the recording, then place them into my community at Essential Genealogist on Facebook. And of course, if you want to go further and faster and deeper, with your use of AI tools for your writing. I've got a course for you coming up in May. I've just begun to structure that, and you will find that this is a 30-day challenge on how you can use ChatGPT to generate titles, chapter titles, outlines, design, and content for your ancestors' profiles, family history blog posts, ebooks, and scrapbooks, and more. That one starts on the 2nd of May in 2023. So I do hope that you've been enthused and that you will enjoy me on this journey into writing with artificial intelligence for genealogists.